I'm just hair clipping the ends of my twists. I find this to be a pretty good way of trimming my hair. So if you can see that a little bit, my ends are crusty and they tangle a lot. So I am trimming the ends, and this is a way for me to trim my hair without taking off too much, because when my hair is loose, it's just hard for me to see it properly, and I don't always want to go to a hairdresser. I like being able to do my hair myself. I like being able to be in control of when I make certain changes and what I do. Is my hair going to be even? No, but that's okay because I hardly wear my hair out. And when I do, it's curly. So it doesn't really matter. This is for me to be able to manage my hair better. So like all this is about an inch and a little bit, but I can feel that it has little knots on the end of it. I can feel that it's tangled. So goodbye. When I wash my hair again, after I take these twists out, when I wash my hair again, if my ends still feel like that, I'm gonna go back in and I'm gonna cut some more. But that's not really what I came on to talk about. There are a lot of women who are making physical changes because of some things that have changed on the inside of them. And so, what we do often when we are going through mental, emotional, spiritual change is that we look at the external to do something that makes us look different because we feel different, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But there are also women who are rebranding themselves or reinventing themselves in order to be perceived a certain way. And there is danger in that because when you rebrand for the purpose of perception, what's happening is that you are allowing something or someone outside of you to dictate how you show up, to dictate how you present yourself. And so your presentation now is driven by what's expected and what's required. And what's expected and required is not always what's aligned. And this is how you can find yourself burning out. This is how you can find yourself becoming resentful towards people. This is how you can find yourself feeling very unhappy because when you show up in the way that you are expected to, only, right? There's nothing wrong with being responsible. That's not what I'm talking about. But when your goals and your dreams, your habits and your actions are based in a certain outcome, then what happens is you cannot function. Oh, I lost track. Oh, it's this one. You cannot function the way you are really wired to because you're performing. You're always in performance mode. You don't get to rest, sometimes physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You don't get to rest because you're always on show. You're always concerned about how you're going to be perceived, how you're going to be received. And that is a recipe for burnout. That is definitely a recipe for burnout. And I'm thinking about Genesis and how when God created the world, he put rest in there as a part of the framework. So I get having periods of time where there is just a lot going on and you have a lot of things to do because there's a certain thing that you want to accomplish. But really question if you are building your life in a way that you can't rest, like you can't be off duty. Because if you are consistently on, then something is wrong. There is only one who doesn't sleep, there's only one who doesn't rest, and that's God. We were created to rest, we were created to reflect Him. And God doesn't perform, He doesn't seek validation, He just is, right? And that's how you need to be also. No performance, no begging to be chosen. God doesn't do that either. He just shows up in the fullness of who He is. So, can you show up in the fullness of who you are? Are you able to do that in whatever situation you're in your family life, in your work environment, as an employee, as an entrepreneur, as a friend, as a member of your community? Are you able to show up in the fullness of who you are? And showing up in the fullness of who you are means that you have to know who you are, because you can't show up authentically if you have not acknowledged your true self. So, just some things to think about in this new year as many of us seek to rebrand and reinvent. Let's really realign. I think that's what needs to happen. And when you've realigned with God, when you've realigned with who you truly are, then you can figure out what you want to do. But if you just up and start planning stuff and you're like, okay, it's 2026, this is what I see people, this is what I see people doing, these are the trends, this is what everyone's jumping on, then you're going to be misaligned. um I'll give this example. You might be focusing on strategy for your business, but really what needs your attention is your family life. You might be focusing on health, but you really need to look at your spirituality. You might be focusing on a budget, but you really need to pay attention to a relationship in your life. And you're not going to see that unless you take the time to evaluate. And that's why one of the things that I created as part of the vision sequence is not just the planning pages, but there is an evaluation. There's a quarterly evaluation. You can do it monthly if you want, but there is a quarterly evaluation. And what that quarterly evaluation does is it allows you to look at your life, 12 different areas of your life, finances, family, health, community, spirituality, different things, and you're going to rate those areas. And in order for you to give something a rating, then you're going to have to give it some thought. You don't have to sit with it for 20 minutes, but give it some thought. And usually your first answer is correct. You rate each area of your life on a scale from 1 to 10, and then that tells you where you are least satisfied. And sometimes we don't think about our life in totality. We think about the area with the biggest problem. It shows you where you're least satisfied, and it also shows you where you're most satisfied. So it gives you a point of gratitude, and it also gives you points for the areas that need to be corrected. So this is something that I've been doing for a few years now, and it really helps me to get things on track. And then it also prevents me from paying all the attention to one area and ignoring the rest, because I've done that in the past where I got so fed up in one area and everything else just kind of fell to the wayside. And if Christ came that I am to have life and have it more abundantly, then that means that I'm not limited to success in one area of my life. I get to have it all, and I get to live a harmonious life and have habits that support me in every area and support the people that I serve. And when I begin to pay attention to the areas that matter to me, I'm able to show up in the areas that matter to others, but it begins with me. And I know it may sound like the more Christian thing to say, no, it starts with everyone else and it starts with supporting everyone else and put other people before yourself. But it is foolish to put everyone else before yourself and not take care of yourself, right? When you're putting other people before yourself, that means that you need to be responsible in making sure that you have capacity to serve them in the areas that they need to be served. Like, my children don't need a worn out mother. My husband doesn't need an impatient and unbalanced wife, right? If I don't take care of me and I put everyone else's needs first, what happens is that I start to become resentful, right? I start to be tired and I don't have capacity and I don't have energy and I just don't have it. And I feel like everyone's asking me to be here and everyone's asking me to do this and everyone's asking me to do that. And I'm tired and I'm frustrated and I'm lashing out. So the best way for me to take care of my family is to take care of myself first. And that starts with my spirit, that starts with my soul, my mind, my will, and my emotions, which is where my vision comes in. And it starts also with me taking care of my body, because the body and the mind is the vehicle that my spirit gets to carry out the vision with. And if I don't pay attention to what's happening in those areas, I don't get to show up in the full extent of my presence and my ability and my purpose. So, purpose requires me to pay attention to what's happening to the woman within. It is extremely important. So we can glorify the actions, but if the actions are not aligned, then it makes no sense. It truly makes no sense. And many of us, for the past 30, 40, 50 years, have been taught to perform. You know, we've been taught to do, we've been taught to show up, and we've been taught to be seen a certain way by others. And yet, what we are projecting is not always who we believe that we truly are. And eventually, the truth is, your perception of yourself is going to tell on you eventually, regardless of who you pretend to be. And we all pretend in some way or another. What we want for 2026 is to live authentically and to live in alignment. And that means paying attention. It means paying attention to life, paying attention to ourselves, paying attention to the people around us, paying attention to how we affect the people around us. And I remember when my vision really started to shift. And in the beginning, I'm going to be honest, it was about me. It was about what I wanted and what I wanted to create. But as I really started working on my spirituality and my own authenticity, I realized that I want to be a woman that people can depend on. I want to be a woman who is compassionate and kind and wise, so that when people do come to me, they're coming to a shelter and not a shield. And that's one of the things. So many of us have been hurt in so many ways that we start building a shield to protect ourselves when we really should be healing so that we can build and become a shelter that would protect others. How many times have you not been able to show up for a friend or a family member in the way that you would like to because just mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you did not have the capacity? You were at zero. And, it felt bad because you know that they need you, but you're just like, I just don't have it. I just don't have it anymore. And that's because you live your life in such a way where you're constantly serving but not resting. And we need to do both. We actually need to serve. We need to be of service to others. We need to be a comfort and a help and a solution for others. God created the woman to be an attractive solution. He said, "It is not good that man should be alone. I will make a suitable helper." Every woman is a suitable helper for someone, not necessarily a husband, but you're a suitable helper in many areas of your life, not only in marriage. You're a suitable helper to your children, to your church, to your employer, to your employees, to the clients that you serve. You are a suitable helper, but you're only a suitable helper if you are in alignment. So in 2026, that's definitely one of the things that I'm working on in my own life and the women who I serve, working on helping them to be truly aligned and aware of who they are, aware of their gifts, their talents, aware of their importance to God, aware of others. Because when you start to pay attention to yourself and you start to see your own issues, your own triggers, you start to see, mistakes that you've made and things like that, you become a resource of wisdom for others. When you truly learn the lessons that life gives us the opportunities to learn, we become a wealth of wisdom for others, and we can give sound advice and we can actually help. But you only do that when you have allowed yourself to go through a certain process, that is going to turn you into that woman who you were supposed to become all along. It's not like you're becoming someone else, you're becoming someone strange and foreign. It's not weird. It's transformation, it's evolution, and we're all meant to go through that. So, just some thoughts I was having while trimming my hair. I hope this helps. Blessings on your journey. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.